the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
A state of control.
This is A State of Control, episode 18, recorded Tuesday, March 10th, 2015. Kumbaya. This is A State of Control, the look at the control and automation segment of the AV industry, brought to you by the fine folks at AVNation. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us, as always, Mr. Steve Greenblatt, Chief Muckety Muck Everything over at Control Concepts in New Jersey. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Glad to be back. Good to see you. It's been like 2 weeks only.
Yeah, Steve and I were both at the NSCA BLC in beautiful Tampa, Florida. And then both of us came back to the frozen tundra of our respective areas. So, someone who doesn't understand frozen tundra is Mr. Rich Fregosa from FregosaDesign.com. Fregosa Design in San Francisco.
I've been indoctrinated in the frozen tundra, so I just returned from it and glad to have 70-degree weather. But so the BLC like the MLT where the mutton's like
it is mutton slightly crispy,
shaved, and the tomatoes so delicious.
All right, so the NSCA, the National System Contractors Association, has the Business and Leadership Conference once a year. It is a gathering of integrators and people like Steve and I and you guys that get together, and they go through 2.5 days of really good, intensive business leadership seminars, lots of really great speakers, and some of the best networking that happens in this industry happens at this event. Would you agree or disagree with that, Steve?
I thought it was great. It's I think it's becoming one of those not to miss conferences.
Yeah. Plus, it's never a bad thing to get out of the cold of St. Louis for me personally, and down to Tampa. So next year it's back in Dallas. So it'll be fun. So you should come.
We kind of got washed out quite a bit, but
just on Saturday. It was pretty rainy on Saturday. But Fregosa, you should come next year. Seriously.
Okay.
Instead of going to the Hamptons in the middle of February, you should go to Dallas.
Yes, I love Dallas.
All right,
I would much prefer Dallas. Although right around that time, occasionally they'll get like the weird twister in Dallas. I've seen weird weather in Dallas at that time.
All right. Well, they also have the Cowboys. So, also with us is Chip Moody from VCA. If you don't know what VCA stands for, it stands for Video Corporation of America. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks. How about yourself?
Doing well. And last but not least, now he's changed his name to David Goldie, and he's confusing the bejesus out of me. His name is David Goldberg. He is from AdvnacedAV, that is, of course, our buddy John Green's place over there in Philly. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Very good.
Very good. All right. So here's kind of what we're going to talk about today, right? Subcontractors, and here's where we get with this, right? So, technically, Rich sometimes can be a subcontractor, sometimes he's not, and Rich, you can correct me on that. Steve sometimes is, and sometimes he's not. 99.9% of the time, I am. My company is called Innovad, Innovation Design. We are programmers. That's all we do. There's a little division over there that does design, but primarily that's what we do. David and Chip these guys are integrators and guys who may or may not hire guys like Steve and me, and sometimes Rich and sometimes not. So that's part of the conversation about subs, and we're going to get into that. The other part of the sub conversation we're going to get into also has to do with what Steve and I and Rich do to cover our own bandwidth issues when we need subs. So when the sub needs a sub, and the responsibilities of honestly of our responsibility when we have to get someone to help us out. So first thing is this. Steve, actually no. Chip, we'll start with you. I want to get kind of the integrator standpoint, and then we'll kind of back it up. Give me, from your perspective, what are some of the advantages or disadvantages of using an in-house programmer versus using, an entirely subcontractor based format?
Well, I think that most of the times when we have subcontractors, there's a very fixed set period of time that they're going to be involved with a project, and if there's any kind of overrun due to circumstances on site, that would cause things to run over. That kind of causes issues. Whereas on my side, I'm always here. Most of our clients are in New York and New Jersey, so it's a matter of a quick car trip or a train ride away for me.
So you're saying that because you're there physically, that your clients have that comfort level, right? You're the guy who's always going over there.
Yes, for at least for the projects that I'm working on, and occasionally if we have a project where there's been a subcontractor, but there are then questions or adjustments that need to be made afterwards, then it becomes a question of, well, do we get the subcontractor back? Do we pass the code over to Chip and let him take a look at it? And
okay.
There's just additional process that needs to be done in those cases.
Okay. All right, Dave, from your perspective, again, another integrator, what are your, because you are an in-house, at least, you are a full-time employee, right, David?
Yes.
Okay. Before I start going down that road, what are the advantages of having kind of a full-time programmer on staff for an integrator?
Well, number one, they can go ahead and do whatever they want with my schedule. So, for instance, if they decide to shift priorities, this project becomes more important than that project, they can do that without without affecting so many other projects. I mean, as a subcontractor, we may have asked a guy, can you be available at this time period? And he may have said, yeah. And then now we got to switch it. He might not be available at that point. And they can't tell him, no, this job's more important than the other job that you were going to work on.
Well, let me ask you, because let me take a slight exception to that. As the person on the other side of that, I don't care. I really don't. If let's pick on Chip and David for a second. If Steve's hiring me, right, and one project's for David and one project is for Chip, and Steve says, this week you're working on David's, and then he calls me up on Tuesday morning and says, oops, I made a mistake, now you're working for Chip. I don't care. I mean, not to be flip about it, but I really don't. I mean, as long as the time is there, right? Does that make sense? As long as the time is there, it doesn't really matter to me as the sub, who you tell me I'm working for.
Right. But I guess the situation that we've run into before, we've had a sub that we said, we're going to need you at this point, and then he had another job at that. We changed it where our contractor slipped. We didn't get in there till late, and then now we need to call him back and say, hey, we need you, but we need you at a different time. Let's say it was a site thing, we need you at a different time, and he can't because he's already doing something else. So this particular contractor tried to do both. Like, he came into our site, or he came into the other site from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then came to our site from 2, and he worked like that for about 3-4 days, and then he got sick, and then he was out and couldn't do anything for like 3 weeks. Couldn't take care of either of the projects. And the two projects that he was working on, were ours and one of our competitors. So of course we don't want him to. We don't care about our competitor's project. We need our project done.
You need better subcontractors, Goldie. I'm just going to put that out there.
And let me state one more thing, just because I remember running into Steve a while ago at this is probably, I don't know, this has got to be like 8-10 years ago, and he said, "Hey, I haven't gotten many calls from you. You know, how come we're not doing much work for you?" I am never the guy that makes the decision on who we're hiring and who's doing. I mean, they don't even tell me when they're subbing jobs out, to tell you the truth. It's supposed to be totally, I don't even know what's going on. Like, if they subbed the job out, it was because they just couldn't fit it into my schedule, and I don't even need to know about it. That's how we hope it goes. Okay,
so let me ask you guys this. From both Chip and David, and actually Rich, because Rich and I both. Actually, I think I would use more subs than Rich does at this point. David, who does that make that decision? Is that the salesperson? Is that you guys' ops manager? Who does make that decision?
Yeah, I have kind of an ops manager that runs interference for the whole engineering department and subcontracts, help on engineering and drawing sometimes, and sometimes code. It just depends. It depends what resources we have and what's available, what's tied up.
All right. Chip, from you guys' standpoint, who's in charge of that?
Could you repeat the question? I just want to make sure I answer this correctly.
So who would be, if I was to call up VCA and say, hey, you know what, I've got a 5,000-hour programming job, and they go, holy crap, I need a sub for this. Who would that person be that says I need a sub?
Well, most likely somebody from our engineering department. We have a few people that would fall into the lap of. It would probably come in through sales, obviously, but then land in the engineering department's lap. My boss might be involved to make the decision of whether to assign that project, or no, we can cover that with a subcontractor.
Okay. All right, Rich, from your standpoint, and let's clarify some stuff. Rich is oh my God, a deity when it comes to residential, but he does a damn good job in commercial as well. When you from your standpoint, I kind of want you to take a look at it from both sides, both from hiring subs and also from being the occasional sub. What are some of the benefits of getting a subcontractor versus having somebody on staff, full time, 40, 50, 60 hours a week?
Well, as a business owner, number one is cost.
Okay.
So, if and again, let's take a look at, kind of the delineation is that, you've got commercial markets, you've got defense, you've got educational, you've got resi, and even in resi, you've got, permutations in there. So if you're a company and you have enough work booked for X amount of time that you can keep people working full time at whatever rate you're paying them at, it's going to make sense for you in the long term because you can control their schedule, you can reprioritize them, and all the things that the guys were talking about. Absolutely. My guys do what I say. As a boss, there's a lot to be said in some instances where, hey, we're doing it my way. And that is definitely the benefit of having in-house staff, that you can task them if you need to triage or if you just need to throw more people at something to get it done quicker. Now, let's flip it around. Say you're not as busy at that time, and you may be in one of the lulls in your business cycle, or you're between projects, or maybe you're kind of just a tweener company right now. You're not a 20-person company. You're a 3 or 4-person integrator, whether you're commercial or residential. Well, at that point, then trying to keep somebody on staff the entire time and the burden cost doesn't necessarily make as much sense as opposed to if you can bring somebody in on an a la carte basis. Are you paying more of a premium for somebody on a project basis by bringing them in from the outside? Yes. But overall, if you're just hiring them on a project-by-project basis, you're not necessarily covering, your overhead for them, all of their expenses. Their disability, their insurance, all of the things that come with having an employee. There's a burden cost as well. If you've got somebody working for you full time, well, whether they're working or not, you still got to pay them. It's not like, you can walk up to your group of programs and say, we don't get any work this week, guys. Sorry. going to go ahead and have you skip that paycheck until we get a new job coming in. Doesn't quite work that way. Employees tend to dislike that pay-as-you-go method of employment. So, I find that, if you're a large enough company and you can sustain it, keep people in-house. But at the same time, you also have to consider, what are your talent pool as well. There's always the difference between the people that you're bringing in. As long as you take care of them, you're over a period of time, guess what? Salaries tend to rise as somebody gets more experienced, as somebody gets older, as somebody, goes from being a 20-something out of school and then gets married and has kids and a mortgage. And guess what? They've been there for a while. They'd like a little bit more of the cheese that's there. And you get X amount of people at that time, you're now dealing with some pretty large burden costs. And so as a business owner, you got to feed that machine. You got to keep all of those, those car payments and those mortgage payments paid on time. And when you're a smaller company, that's not always the case. You don't necessarily have that kind of business where you have a separate sales department and engineering and pre-sales and service department and warehouse people and ... That's great. There's lots of companies out there, but there's just as many who aren't. And I think really it's speaking to that, which is, you always have to take a look at, if you can afford it, yeah, of course you can control your people. But if you can't afford it, then you got to be a little bit more efficient with your outlay.
All right, Mr. Greenblatt, we'll let you have the last word on this. First, before you get started, because you and I have a different business model, right? And we've talked with our buddy Mark Lavecchia before, out in California. He and I have a similar business model, and I say similar. Mark and I's business model are more business to business, right? I would go after VCA or after AdvnacedAV, as those are primarily not them specifically because they're not in St. Louis, but the Midwest is kind of where I live and breathe. Mark is California. We go after integrators. Those are primarily my customers. That's who I go after. You do that in addition to going, serving the end user directly, very similar to what Rich does. So from your standpoint, you and Rich kind of get to see both sides of that. Which one is the best one for you from your standpoint? Is it better to have full-time folks, or is it better to occasionally subcontract this out?
So for us, to answer that question, the strategy that we take is that we try to form relationships with the technology managers to be able to provide them with some consistency, knowing that they are probably going to be using multiple integrators, and give them a resource that they could go to directly to service their functionality and programming needs. And more and more that's being brought to light as being an important part of their systems, which I'm glad, because that's good for all of us. And I think programming is becoming more of this specialty, and realizing that that's a difference maker in a system. So that's really the angle that we've been taking, because it works out very well for our business. Many of the integrators in our area and those that we work with do have in-house programmers, and that's a good thing too. And I think the important part there is, like Chip said and Dave said before, somebody has to be able to own the system, and somebody has to be able to own the code and do that aftercare. And we're really not set up to do service, and we're not going to be cost effective to do small changes. So it is important for an integrator to have an internal resource to be able to provide the quick response time and the relationship that their customers need. What we look to do now is we still need to have the relationships with integrators, because we're still going to be working hand in hand in projects, and we still want to be able to supplement their resources when it's a good fit. Where we come in mostly is for a large project, to be able to own that project, take it off of their hands, be able to be dedicated to it, and so that they have they don't tie up all of their resources in one area. They need to be able to be a little bit more fluid, from what I understand, so that they could service all of their customers and not be in a situation where they say we can't get to you for X date, because that's just not something that their customers will be able to live with. I mean, that's my understanding. And in our situation, as far as outsourcing from our company, we just find it very difficult to be able to have those types of relationships and find good people that we can trust and that are willing to do stuff the way we do it, and because that's really what we sell, is our process and our consistency.
Yeah. All right, Chip. Steve made a very good point here. When is it the best time to get a sub, right? Is it, he mentioned a big project. So let's say that you've got 10 projects on the books. They're relatively small. We're all, well, you all are programmers. I just happen to know what you guys talk about. Let's say that you have well, I can still control a Sony camera. So let's just put it that way. That's a programmer joke. Don't worry about it, kids. So let's say you've got 10 projects on the board. They're roughly, let's say they're 20 hours, right? And you've got enough full-timers on staff to handle those, no big deal. And then you come across this 1,000-hour behemoth. Which is better for you? Because let's say that it has to be done, by X amount of time. You have to get help. That's not the option here. Is it better then to do what talked about what Steve said? Is it better to say, okay, Mr. Subcontractor, here's the 1,000 hours, knock yourself out. I'll invite you to all my kickoff meetings, get you in everything, or is it better to, Mr. Programmer, here's my 10 programs, and bring that 1,000 hours in house?
I'm going to go with the latter part that you mentioned. I would think that taking on the single large-scale project in-house would be a better choice for us, assuming that we hadn't already gotten our toes wet in the 10 little projects, then yes, absolutely.
Okay, and why is that?
Again, just because there'd be the foresight of potential scheduling conflicts down the line, just the 1,000-hour project probably needing a little more attention to detail, just more at stake that would probably benefit from a closer eye in-house.
Okay. All right, Dave, same question to you. All right, same scenario. You guys have got enough bandwidth that you can handle these smaller projects, and holy crap, you've got this thing that comes in the door. Subbing is not an option here. You guys have got to get help in some way, shape, or form, some level. Is it better to bring the big behemoth in-house and sub the smaller ones for you guys? Or is it better to sub out the big giant mamma jamma?
That's a good question. Sometimes the administrative stuff that goes along with each job, if I'm going to say all the little jobs are going to be a pain in the butt for one sub to deal with all the administrative nonsense of that, whereas you could give him the one big behemoth and that's his one customer. But then again, I hate giving away any jobs. You know what I mean? I wish I could do them all.
But there are only so many hours in the day, and
I totally
I know
understand
your bosses at AdvnacedAV love to hear you say that.
At some point after maybe my second year of programming, working like 80-hour weeks or something, I was like, all right, I give up. Go ahead, sub it out, And then I just pray that it's getting subbed out to somebody good, so that when I do eventually end up opening their code to look at it, to service it, to whatever, that I can actually follow it. Because there have been some good, definitely one of those good guys, and there have been some disasters along the way. I'm not going to name names because it's just not good. But we've had it both ways, and I mean, I hate to give away that big job because it could be that I've already established a relationship with that customer, and he expects me, when he comes in, he expects that he's hiring Goldie to do this job, and now it's getting subbed out, But then again, to give away a million little jobs they're all the administrative hassle that goes along with each one job. It might be easier from our standpoint to give away the behemoth and take care of all the little ones.
All right,
and probably more cost effective too, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't get involved. See, Steve, I don't have the business sense that you have, so I've never been involved in that.
Sure.
I don't even.
And then Steve, same question to you. Which if you had the, because you will have to. You and I have talked about this before. I use subs, right? If I've gotten to the point where,
making copies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I've got there have been times, and I have a handful of folks that I trust. To Goldie's point, that they know my process. I know their code. There has been a training process that has happened. And, I pretty much know what I get. So, Steve, would you rather keep the big one in-house or sub out the big one?
I think we're going to keep the big one in-house, honestly, because it's those are usually where we can excel, and I find that those are more profitable for us because it gives us, similar to what Dave was saying, the overhead cost is a lot easier to justify in a larger project than it is if there's this amount of project management involved, and I think that we end up creating a lot more efficiency in a larger project.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to come off of what Goldie said here about being able to read the code and this, that, and the other. I have learned an awful lot about making sure that happens from these two guys right here, and that's Steve and Rich. A number of years ago, when I first met Mr. Fregosa, he gave me a piece of advice that I've held on to this day. If you can't read, Mr. Chip, Mr. Goldie, me, myself, if I, God forbid I have to write a piece of code anymore, if I can't read what I write in 6 months, I've done a poor job. Meaning, once I sign off on the job and I load the program and I debug the sucker out, up one side and down the other, and I walk away from that job, if in 6 months I can't open that piece of code back up in my laptop and look at it and figure out what the heck I wrote, then I did a poor job, right?
Agreed.
So, Mr. Fregosa, give me your standard dissertation, which you've done on this show before, you've done for me in private, how you train your folks to do that.
One is it winds up being almost a condition of employment, which
eventually you're going to charge me for this, by the way.
Yeah, which winds up being if I come back, a couple of years later and I can't see what's going on, we're going to have some words, because a lot of the times the problem is that that we have a rule, which is if you can't basically print an operation manual out of the comments in your code, then you've got a problem, because you can't count on the fact that you're going to have all of the documentation from the project. When you're starting a job, you get your drawings and your as-built, and you've got your notes, and you're carrying all of these things in your head. And what experience has taught us is that 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, Chip can attest to this, 7 years down the line, you open something up, and if you haven't created your own method of documentation inside the code, again, it's if you count on everybody else to do their job for you to do yours, you're going to be in a world of hurt down the line, because integrators go away. The facilities manager, they're on their 4th facilities manager, and the guys can attest to this. Like, you come back a couple of years later and you're like, hey, where's all the files that I left? Oh yeah, we cleaned out that closet 3 years ago, or we moved it over, or oh, that guy left, and it was all those files were on his computer, all of these horror stories that go on. So, from a commenting standpoint, and again, I go over and over and over, is that it helps you be lazy. It helps you be efficient, because then you don't have to carry as much in your head. And when you're starting out, you're like, oh yeah, no, I'll keep all of this in my head. I got stuff that I'm like, I don't even remember programming these jobs. I mean, I'll get calls on a name. I'm like, who? are you sure I did it? And they're like, yeah, your name's on it. And I'm like, wow, that West Coast living was good to me, I guess, for a couple of years. So,
well, and it's not that. I mean, here's the thing, guys. Let's be honest here. Most of us and are of a certain age that, good God, I did it this week to one of my TP folks. I sent they shot me a touch panel, and I said, okay, so what about the other, the secondary touch panel? And they shot me one back, and then, what the freak are you talking about? And I had 3 jobs crossed in my head, So we're not getting younger, and so our brain power is not what it used to be. At least our memory is not what it used to be. So yeah, commenting and doing exactly what Rich is talking about makes a whole lot of sense. So, all right. So from the commenting, from subbing out versus making sure that we're handling exactly what we're capable of and what we want to keep our hands on. Steve, we're going to kick this part off with you. There are times, and we just illustrated a possible time, when the in-house programmers and Chip and Goldie there has to work with guys like us. So, what is the best way to make that relationship as painless for both involved, right? Because there's, let's be honest with all of us here, Rich's Kumbaya, there are going to be some egos, okay? There are going to be some, I'm better than you, my magic is better than you, my smoke is, but whatever. And there has to be some resource management, some give and take here. So, Steve, from your standpoint, what is the best way to make that relationship as frictionless as possible?
I think the main thing is to have good communication, get to know each other. We should have a direct relationship. It's not good if we're both working in our own world and just assume that everything is going to mesh well. From an outsider's perspective, we need to understand what our clients' needs are and how they work and what's going to work well for them in terms of their standards and their processes and some ways that they like to see things or they like the way things work. They may not be the same the way we do, but let's figure out what's a fair compromise or what's going to make life easier. The reason for the reason that I wanted to have everybody on today is because we all work together in the same world, and we sometimes work with each other and for each other, and we're all friendly, and I think that's important, and we shouldn't have barriers or boundaries. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing, and we see a lot of that these days in social media where we're trying to help each other. I think we're all programmers trying to do a job for a customer, and I think that's the way we need to look at it in order for things to work well. And nobody's better than another. Maybe some have certain strengths in certain areas, but in this day, I think that we all have to learn to share and collaborate, and I think that's what makes a successful relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Goldie, from your standpoint, if you're put in a situation where you have to work with a subcontractor, from your standpoint as one of the in-house guys, what's the best way to make that relationship work well?
Just like Steve said, communicate as much information as possible and start with a good product in the first place. So if you've worked with contractor A and they're terrible and you're pushed, you have to get this project done or whatever, you know that working with contractor A again, it can't even be an option. But as much communicate. I mean, I've had the situation where we used a semi-local guy, 3D Control Solutions, Brian Piquel, very good programmer. We've used them before, and then at some point, like I said, they don't even tell me when they're subbing jobs out most of the time. But at some point, our own demo room at AdvnacedAV needed to have some work done to it. They brought Brian in to do it. He used our standard, pages and code and everything. He started out with that. I guess he started out with the pages, but, code guys like to do stuff their own way, so he did his own code. I came into the room months later, sat down, tried to do something, and realized, this button's not lighting up, and that's not rotating, and that's not, and it was because none of that information had ever been passed on to him. And he made the room work. It works. It does what it's supposed to do. It makes calls. It, operates and everything. But does it work as slickly as it's supposed to? No, because nobody ever told him, hey, by the way, that button's supposed to hide and another one's supposed to show, and, things like that. The information just didn't get transmitted. So I would say communication, if you're going to have your in-house guys work with your subcontractors, then communication is key. That's definitely a big first step.
No, that's a good one. I like that one. Mr. Rich, from your standpoint, how do we make the in-house guys and the subs play nice together?
Again, it is my Kumbaya thing. I love collaboration, man. I really do. I think that you bring in good people, and they challenge one another. And programmers are a weird lot, man. They're a rare bird. And there's
some to all this, by the
way. And even more control system programmers, because again, it's we're working with purpose-driven code, and we're operating even outside of the software development community. And again, I mean, we're a decimal point correction, and I think I always laugh that our industry tends to we have an identity crisis and we take ourselves too seriously all at the same time. And so if the software development community can do it, and on a much larger scale, and there's rules in place, and here comes the word standards. The fact is that we're seeing a forced evolution of how we're developing. 20 years ago, and I think all four of us, I mean, if you ask 15 years ago, we had different tools. We had a much different way of doing things. It was the Wild West. Half the time it was like, can you make this work? They're like, I don't know, but yeah, it'll be cool. Let's try it. I mean, it was just, the running joke is that most of us got into AV because we weren't going to get paying gigs making music. So, so we needed a day gig. And so that, originally it was rock and roll, and it was just figuring it out as you went. And now we're maturing. And the guys that were 20-something and full of ego and believe in their own press, you kind of mellow out over time, and you discover that you can make your life a lot simpler when you just chill and work with everybody, and you can get more done. You can make people happy, and guess what? You can make more money. And for me, it's we had a running joke with our guys. We say pride comes from the bank. At that point, you get the job done, you get in, you get out, you get paid. That's really what it's about. Then go do whatever the heck you want to do. Enjoy your hobbies and everything else, man. But crank it out, get it done. Set your egos aside. And I think sooner or later we're getting there. I think in commercial we're getting there a lot faster than resi. I think it's necessary because the margins are shrinking, things are getting commoditized. You've got no choice. It's not like you want to. It's just that's what's presented to you, and you throw in the consulting community on top of it. You have to run lean, otherwise you're just not going to be around long enough. And like I said, I think it's going to evolve as the software community has evolved as well, and the development community has evolved as well, because you're going to need more true software developers in the future. Guys who were copy and pasters are going to be left out in the cold, and you're going to see more and more that people with serious technical skills are going to have to come in, and that's going to require that you can't necessarily have 5 top flight software engineers working under your roof. You got to have a couple of guys who can deploy, and maybe 1 or 2 hot shots, but just to keep costs down. Otherwise, it's like to do your conference boardroom, and here's your programming bill of $1.7 million because I had to pay for all of these guys. It's economics too. And again, coming from a business owner standpoint, it's like, look, what's going to be the most profitable? And for me, my feeling is if for all of us to eat, you kids have to play well together in the sandbox. I'm going to knock your heads together until you do.
Yeah, and that makes sense. All right, Chip, from you'll have the last word on this from the in-house guy. How do you, from your standpoint, how do you play nice with the subs?
Well, I'm going to make this part really short for everybody else because I've never actually been in a situation where I've had to collaborate on a project with another programmer.
Okay.
Whether that's lucky for me or unlucky, I don't know, but it's just the way it's been so far.
Here's the thing. There's something to be said for collaborating. I mean, I come from the school of Rich and Steve, so I agree that there is benefit to collaborating, but good on you for not having to yet. So, I don't know if it's good or bad.
I think the closest I've ever come to that was actually with a manufacturer that we needed to integrate with their device, and they did not have an API at the time. So I actually spent a number of meetings with one of their representatives where we basically hashed together what they were going to implement on their side as basically an XML communication socket going back and forth to get messages between their product and a Crestron control system. And so that was kind of fun, and it worked out really well too. They took care of their side really well, and it was very solid, and it was a good experience.
Okay, yeah. All right. As we kind of wrap this up, I want to kind of get your guys' sense, and Steve, I want to start with you on this. When it comes to, I guess the best way to put this is owning the project, and not. I don't want to use the phrase owning the code because that's a whole different conversation, but owning, owning the project and being responsible for it. Where does that line lie once you hire a sub? Is there any onus on guys like Goldie and Chip to have their hand and to collaborate a little bit and kind of hold the subcontractor's hand a little bit, back to what Rich was saying, to make sure that they hold to a standard? Or is it pretty much, you know what, dude, here's your scope of work, here's your drawings, here's your deadline?
From my standpoint, we get assigned a project is just like they get assigned a project, unless there's a reason for us to have guidance or direction. Maybe it's a special situation or circumstance. We take the project and take ownership of it, and we need to commit to delivering a final product that works and see it through and be responsible, just as though a project was assigned to an internal resource. The only difference being that in the end, we have to turn over ownership when it goes into a warranty period or a maintenance period. At that point, there's usually some type of delineation. But the response, if somebody is coming in coming in behind us or coming in to rescue us or something like that, that means we haven't done a good job. Of course, there's cases where there's certain situations, maybe a schedule got accelerated, or maybe some type of the scope got made bigger because of an agreement or something that was out of our control, and then an integrator says we're going to have our programmer handle that portion of it. Then we certainly will be working side by side and need to figure things out together. But typically a project is deliverable that we need to start from and do from beginning to end, and our responsibility is to provide a working system.
So before we move on from there, so let me understand what you said there. If once you hand over the code and you load it and you test it and everything, and you guys kind of walk away, is there never a situation where you also offer the service or the warranty for that for a certain amount of time, or is that kind of from your guys' standpoint that's on the integrator?
It depends on the situation. I mean, we're glad to, and we're certainly going to address any bug fixes but beyond that, typically there's some type of a completion line that's drawn where we say the requirements have been met. We're satisfied that the system works, and now it's going into a different phase. But if we're not going to, it's not going to be a hard line for us. I mean, we try to support our projects as much as we can within reason, but it's something that you have to figure out when the project ends so that we can switch gears and move on to the next thing, or we can know that we're going to archive this project and then turn it over.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Who would he be offering that warranty to? Would it be his customer, like the integrator?
Well, I guess from, and I was just trying to kind of wrap my brain around that. But yeah, the integrator, and so where, the integrator wouldn't necessarily have to staff that part of the warranty, but Steve raised a good point. Code is horrible. Programming is horrible for punch listing, right? Rich has told me, horror stories before in the residential. It's a little easier from my perspective in the commercial world, right? You've got a CSI spec. You can kind of base your punch list on that, and say, okay,
there, and he's gone.
Yeah.
He's back.
He's back.
The wonderful world of the internet. In the commercial world, it's easier because you have a CSI spec, right? You can base your punch list on that. In Resi, it's a lot more squeezy, squishy, wiggly lines that kind of get moved and shaped. And I was just trying to wrap my brain about what where Steve was saying that warranty period started, and he's right. Once it's been signed off on, and the client and the integrator, because at that point that's our client, signs off, then I guess it's theirs. So
not that we want to walk away, and I think that there's more of a growing need to be able to have that ongoing support. It just and I think it's something together we need to think about is who's taking responsibilities. That client has a system that more than likely they're going to be making programming changes before they're making changes, and they should have a resource to be able to call on.
All right. Mr. Chip, from your standpoint, where does that line lie for you guys?
Depending on who did the code, I mean, it's always, I always feel it's personally my responsibility to be on top of the stuff.
Okay. And that's, that makes sense. It also goes back to, Chip is, Chip never has not had to collaborate with anyone. I almost said play nice together, but has never had to collaborate with someone. So, Goldie, from your standpoint, is it all you guys from once the client signs off?
I'll say that sometimes if there's a big job and it was a complicated and somebody service throws something my way and says, can you take a look at this? If I look at it and it looks like it's going to be more than 10 minutes for me to figure out what's going on, I will actually call the sub that did it and say, hey, with this. And I'm hoping that they're going to actually go, oh, yeah, let me help you out. And if I have that kind of relationship with them, I'm definitely more apt to suggest, that guy's great, use him again.
Okay. No, that's good information to know. And then Mr. Fregosa, we'll give you the last word on this.
I don't know if I'm always the best example because I spoil my integrators. I know it for a fact. I mean, I ripped out my distributed audio system 3 days ago and drove it up 2 hours to a client's house for one of my integrators because they didn't have the part. And so I just did it because my feeling is that my integrators clients are my clients, and there is doing just enough, and there is forming partnerships. And my feeling is that although somebody is cutting a check to me or I'm cutting a check to them, it's ride or die, baby. You got to do it together. And I found that pays dividends over the years. I found that my relationships with my integrators are much stronger for that reason. My rates aren't questioned for that reason. And on top of it, I tend to be championed to people if there's an instance where they've got programmer A or programmer B or something, say, oh, well, my friend called so-and-so. Well, it's like, no, we're using Rich for XYZ, and let me explain to you what happened and why. Again, it really depends on how you treat your business model, how you treat your clients, how you view it. Again, it's all Kumbaya again, man. It's just like, you put out good karma comes back. But I do find that, in this industry, if you're passionate about what you do, it's not really a problem to take care of a problem and honestly say it's your fault. I offer a lifetime warranty to my clients. If it's my mistake and they call me 5 years later, I will fix it, period, no charge, because I screwed up. And come back and say, yeah, that was on me. If it's something the integrator's done or there's a problem or the client's changed, then we'll come back and we'll try to find a way to make it work and find a middle ground. But, I've never been of the opinion, and again, I'm in Resi, so it's a little bit different, but I've never been of the opinion that you should ever try to punish the people that hired you because they didn't do it the way you wanted. I find it very short-sighted. And actually, I love dealing with companies that work like that because I just rake in right behind them.
Just kind of walk behind them and say, "Okay, I'll take that one."
Just thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Exactly.
All right, guys. That's going to do it for this episode of State of Control. With us has been Mr. Chip Moody from VCA. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people find you and or VCA?
We're at VCAGlobal.com.
Okay, very good. Also with us is Goldie, who's playing with the Google Hangouts toolbar now. Oh, goody. He found the sound effects and the handlebar mustache. Where can people find you and or AdvnacedAV? And you better do this right because you have a brand new website.
Westchester, Pennsylvania.
And where is AdvnacedAV and your brand new website?
www.advancedav.com.
Good. Marina is never going to let you back on this show ever again.
Let's go for three.
Can you tell me?
Lord, yes, I can tell you. It's very nice. It has. You guys have got an actual your mobile. You finally have a mobile site as well. It squishes and squashes and looks pretty good on the mobile application. So,
dang.
Yeah, you might want to check that out. Check out your website. Rich Fregosa, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Yeah, actually, Chip Moody is Chip Moody worldwide. You need help? Call Chip Moody worldwide.
He'll be there. He doesn't work with anyone, but he'll be there. Where can people find you, Mr. Fregosa?
Type my name, look for me sweeping up behind bad programmers and integrators. Twitter at rfregosa, fregosadesign.com, on these lovely podcasts, and occasionally as a contributor to the AVNation Army, and on the Facebooks and the Google Plus and every place else. And a couple of cool stuff. A couple of nice things have come up when you type in my name in the Googles. We just had 2 case studies published by one of the control manufacturers about 2 of my projects. So
nice.
Kind of fun.
Very cool. Very nice. And occasionally also at the CE Pro. So
occasionally at the CE Pro, yes. Looking forward to being more with the CE Pro and as a CEDIA ambassador again this year.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. I was talking with Olivia Selke, and it's a good chance. There's a good chance that we will be back at CEDIA this year. I almost said back in Denver, but it's not in Denver. It's in Dallas this year. So
good times.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Cowboy Stadium, actually programmed by a friend of the show, who actually a prior guest.
Really?
Yep.
Who was that? Or can you not say?
I can neither confirm nor deny, but I'll tell you later.
All right. Not the first football-ish thing that's happened from a guest of this show.
There might be people on this show who might have done a couple of stadiums here and there.
Yes. Yeah, they're cool, especially when I get a text and say, "Hey, look what I just did." All right, Steve, Mr. Greenblatt, where can people find you?
Frozen.
He is frozen. We have had.
You can find me
There he is.
at. Sorry.
No, you're frozen. But go ahead and talk.
No. You can find my website at controlconcepts.net and
Tim, why don't you tell them?
Yeah,
what-
controlconcepts.net. He's out of New Jersey. Maybe.
They're in there.
Jeez.
Now we lost Tim.
Tell you what, let's get out of this thing before the internet's break. Controlconcepts.net and Tech Talk and some other really cool things.
And at Steve Greenblatt.
At Steve Greenblatt. Don't follow me at this point. I'm hoping and praying the Bears do something less stupid than get rid of Brandon Marshall. But go by the website if you would, please. AVNation.tv. I'm sorry if you're a Jets fan, people over there in the New York, New Jersey area. I hated to see Mr. Marshall go. So, but AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv, this program, and a host of others. Holy cow, all kinds of really cool stuff. We've got some really great bloggers coming up. This is, yeah. Go by the website. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. This has been a very interesting episode of A State of Control. Thanks.